Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the Isle of Lynx in New York State, which means it's time for this. So I'm Laoshi Lawrence McElroy of Water Tiger School, Tai Chi Chuan, and this is our usually weekly presentation, Facebook Live session, whatever. A little workshop, Tai Chi, Qigong, etc. Put together for everyone in these turbulent times in which we find ourselves, but especially selected this time at 10 a.m. on Mondays because we have a program suspended from one of our public library clients, Sachem Public Library in Holbrook, New York. So here we are. Good morning, Colette. So some things to talk about before we get started. One, keep in mind, even though I've more or less been home for the last, 4 months? Let's see, March to April, April to May, May to June, June, July, July to August, 5 months almost. I'm still need some time off, so most things Water Tiger and Laoshi are going to go dark next week, this week starting on Saturday through next week ending on Saturday. So there'll be no Facebook Live session next Monday, and we'll still be available enough to remind everybody at 10 a.m. on Monday that there's no live session. So there's that, but we'll be back the week after. Hi, Linda. Without, hopefully without a doubt, but we should be back the next Monday. So that's a week from today, which is the 17th. No live session, but we should be back the 24th with our regular live session. So there's that. Just a word with where we are as far as Water Tiger School's studio program. Still in limbo. Did run across some official word from the governor's office, and that official word is, we don't have a date in mind yet for the safe reopening of gyms and recreational facilities. Now, there are several lawsuits in the works from gyms and recreational facilities pursuing being able to reopen. Water Tiger's not taking part in that. And several other gym and recreational facility organizations have submitted to the governor's office safe reopening plans that the governor's office is reviewing. But again, as it stands, no studio program for a while. And given that, recreational facilities could very well be considered what our community rooms are in our various public libraries, probably not going to see an in-library exercise program for a while, just FYI. So there's that. I know I announced probably a couple weeks ago Sachem was open on a limited basis. West Babylon Public Library is now open on a very limited basis. They have taken some of their programs remote, including Water Tiger Tai Chi program. And other libraries are doing remote, but there are a lot of them that are just not. So anyway, so there's that. And I think that's really it, except to talk about what we're going to do today. So a little warm up, kind of sticking with the Tai Chi Qigong series of warm-ups. I know we did 9 temple exercises last week, just advance and retreat because we did something from the 5 animal frolics. But we'll be back into something from the Coiling set from the primary, from the stationary Tai Chi Qigong, family of stationary Tai Chi Qigong exercises or postures. So something that's actually linked to the last one we did. Last time we did something from Tai Chi Qigong that was Golden Rooster twists its wings, and this is slightly related to that. We'll explain that when we get to it. And then another variety is the Spice of Tai Chi, way to approach our practice. In Water Tiger School, we call it a stop and start play. And we'll get into that for a while this morning as well. So I believe that's it. I'm going to get a drink. I'm going to step back, and we'll get started. Seems like I'm forgetting something. I don't know if this is what I thought I was forgetting, but I did not put this in airplane mode. Let's hope this week I remember to take it off of airplane mode after we finish our session, because sometimes late in the day I'm like, usually I get something over my phone by now. A text, an email, a phone call, like 3 o'clock in the on a Monday afternoon. I pick up the phone and it's like, oh, it's in airplane mode. Oops. All right, so a little shake. I have my taped lines out again just for shoulder width. Just a reminder, anybody's new, they wonder what it's there for, my railroad tracks, for defining our shoulder width. We'll get into that in a moment. Just want to shake, maybe do some huggers, crossing arms, one hand over the top, the other one over the top. So we're still uploading old Facebook Live sessions once a week to our YouTube channel. Last Wednesday, it was from program for West Babylon, when their program was also suspended, both in person and remotely, from April 14th. So, you know, we're a ways back there on the calendar. And this was binding. It's another variety, is the spice of Tai Chi. It's from what we refer to as our bag of fun in the studio, and it's playing with one arm restricted. Ideally actually tied down, but since I knew some people wouldn't be able to do that, I used a sling, you know, in that particular live session. And you can also, you know, sling both arms and still play the form, but without your arms. So anyway, so that was uploaded on Wednesday. We did some original content that we uploaded on Thursday on the YouTube channel, Water Tiger Tai Chi on YouTube. And that content did sort of a compare and contrast of 3 different side stretches that we use in various warm-ups, you know, sometimes as a single depending upon the program, but a lot of times for this particular program, when it's 3D, when it's in real life, for Sachem, it's a part of a larger warm-up set. And we did presented the standing side stretch from yoga, or what I know as the standing side stretch from yoga. What else? Oh, pick the fruit from the 9 temple exercises, and what we at Water Tiger refer to as pick the fruit 2.0. So we sort of had a yoga side stretch, a Qigong, more or less a Qigong side stretch from 9 temple exercises, and more or less a Tai Chi side stretch from pick the fruit 2.0. So that's what the last newest content. It'll be a while before we do some more new content. So enough about that. Tai Chi Qigong, grand ultimate energy work, lack of a better translation. So it's not Qigong that's based in Tai Chi Chuan, it's Qigong that's based in Yin Yang theory, or Tai Chi theory, or grand ultimate theory, or grand terminus theory. So more or less a Taoist approach to Qigong. Coiling set involves, you know, twisting the muscles, because what that does when you twist and release, return the muscles to their original position, and the bones and the joints, it helps to the chi that you've cultivated through the exercise. It helps to condense it into the bone marrow, which helps with the health of the bone marrow and the functionality of the bone marrow, and brings it to the surface of the skin. Now, sometimes we want to bring chi to the surface of the skin because it's old, it's stagnant. We talk about that in one of our tapping exercises. But in this particular instance, what we're doing is sort of raising, not bringing it to sort of hang out on the skin, but bringing it to the surface to act as, if I have the pronunciation right, wei chi, which is protection chi. So you kind of have this crunchy candy coating of chi around your body to help keep other things from coming in. So also Tai Chi Qigong, just always about getting into the breath, deepening the breath. For us at Water Tiger School, bringing the breath into the body into the breath. And also for us, our approach to Tai Chi Qigong, 2 things. Once the movement starts, it's continuous. And 2, we want to determine our range of motion by our ability to maintain such things as the shoulders and the elbows are still sunken. The chest is still sunk, the back is still rounded, and I still always have that little opening underneath the arms. So there's not a lot of pressure between the inside of the biceps and the triceps and the outside of the lats. So if you know Water Tiger, you know turn heaven and earth in front of the body. I'm going to back up just so you can get sort of a full view here. I know my picture is smaller, but this palm is up to the heavens. The one that's up, the one that's down is down to the earth. And the hands come palm to palm. The upward moving hand shifts in front, then comes back into alignment, Gong point to Gong point, center of palm to center of palm, and you switch back and forth like that. Now, a couple weeks ago, we did something similar, but it was Golden Rooster twists its wings, where the downward hand in that equation wraps around the torso and ends behind the back, ideally on the center line, but yes, palm down. Why I say ideally on the center line and yes, palm down, is if you can't get it to the center line and have the palm down, then find that place that's moving in that direction where the palm is down. And then imagine somebody's holding it in that place and you're pressing against their hand as if you're getting it there. But the palm has to be down and ideally on the center line. And the hand in front stays in the front plane of the body, the front plane of the nose, front plane of the face. Right, so, boom, it's right there. Gong point, center line, where my nose is. Right, it's not there, it's not over there, not there, not above the head, not above the Bach way, but in the front plane. So that's Golden Rooster twists its wings. Now, we also might know, if we know Water Tiger, that there are times that we twist the torso but leave the hips in place. So FYI, this is different than our Tai Chi Chuan, because generally when we twist the torso in Tai Chi Chuan, we're also turning the hips, so the shoulders and the hips stay in alignment, which relieves pressure on the abdominal cavity and the lower back. If you have back issues, one of the reasons a lot of people do Tai Chi is the alignment, especially young style and especially large frame young style. The shoulders and the hips remain in alignment, so you're not putting spiral pressure on the spine. Here we are. So warning, 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 danger, Will Robinson. Be careful if you have abdominal issues or lower back issues, because this is going to put pressure on both. So if you've recently had an abdominal surgical mesh put in place, probably shouldn't do this exercise. If you have certain impingements in the lower spine, probably shouldn't do this exercise, or really back off of your full range of motion so you don't put too much of that twisting pressure in the belly and the lower back. And also, this is the one that always concerns me personally a great deal, and that's, you know, if I happen to be in the early stages of pregnancy, wait a second, I don't think, biologically, does that make sense? You don't want to twist your abdominal cavity, because in the early stages of pregnancy, that kind of twisting pressure can dislodge the embryo that's trying to root. So anyway, so there you go. There's your cautions. What happens now is we add that twist, and we twist in the direction of the upward hand. But that upward hand is going to stay still, center line, center of palm, where your nose is. And your nose is pretty much going to stay, you know, really close to being perpendicular to your shoulders. So I'm not turning my head all the way back here to make me have to really crank that arm back and behind. Get back down on my knees, maybe a little bit lower. So if I'm doing this and twisting this direction, notice that hand is still in front of my face and not, you know, not there, not there, and I'm not pushing it to put too much pressure on my back. So you want to find a comfortable amount of your twist and keep that upper hand in alignment with the center line of your nose. So I hope that made some sense. We're just going to do 3 pairs here, I think, this morning. So 6 total. I'm going to shake again. Am I showing you what not to do? Sort of tweak my back a little bit. Imagine that. We're going to breathe into this, so there's a process. Breath and movement should be 1. If you can match the breath and the movement as I describe it, great. But if you cannot, that's all right too. Just make sure your breath is part of your movement and your movement is part of your breath. In other words, I move because I breathe and I breathe because I move. going to start with the arms hanging. This is turn your head to look at the moon from the coiling sets in the stationary family of Tai Chi Qigong. Find an aspect of the breath to float the hands. Then probably an inhalation, drawing the hands up, fingertips forward, bringing the hands to the center line, still ideally on the inhalation, one above the other. The one that's above goes up on that center line. The one that's below starts to twist around the body. And even though I'm twisting the torso, it should ideally still end even with my spine in the way that I showed you earlier. Coming back, what's up comes down. What's down rises up. They do pass on the center line. And once the downward hand passes the rising hand, you're moving into the twist to the other side. You're lowering that hand down, and ideally both hands get to the apex of their extension at the same time. I'm going to hold this for a moment, and maybe you can see that nice roundness there. That's the moon to which I am looking. Coming back, ideally on an inhalation, but breathe when you have to. Nice, long, fine, calm, and slow breaths. 3 of 6. Reaching that apex, that extension in the two directions, and a simple bounce brings you back to the center. So 3 of 6, 3 left, second half, second pair. Little twist. Boom, hand on the center line behind at the spine. Palm down if you can't get it to the center line. Right? I'll do for 5 of 6, I'll do a little reinterpretation. Say I have a shoulder impingement in my left shoulder, that left hand is going down and back, and I can only get it here, so it's still in front of the hip, more or less. That's fine, but I still have to judge that distance and get there only when the upper hand reaches it. Neither extension should stop and wait for its sibling. Last twist, second side. I lied, let's do 3 more. 3 more pair. Palm to palm. I just don't feel like, especially if you've never done this, that probably 3 pairs is not enough. So here's the first half of the 4th pair, now going to 6. 2 hands reaching the apex at the same time and coming back together. The upper arm rounded. That sort of represents the moon to which we are twisting. Twisting that torso. Part of why this is referred to as the coiling set. I sort of have a little bit of an issue with that. Though in all reality, as we're twisting, we are twisting one direction and then twisting back the other, so coiling is sort of appropriate. But normally when I use the word twist, I'm thinking more Qian-Si, more silk reeling than coiling, and those are 2 different energies in our Tai Chi and Qigong. First half, now the 5th pair. So we're going to 12 total, so we're at 9. You're counting individual repetitions, ideally an exhalation at the extension, and inhalation at the compression. Palm toward palm, the upward moving hand shifts out of the way. Continues up, even with the nose. The center line as it moves through the face, not necessarily the torso, down to the pubic bone, but the face most definitely. So one last pair, that was 10 of 12 total, second half, 5th pair. Coming up, one last time to the first side. Love this twist. And coming back. Most days, not all days. Some days it's not too much fun. As of my lower back, for instance, if I show people what not to do in this instance, and I tweak my back, I lose a little bit of my range of motion, but I didn't tweak it too bad. So left to the left, right to the right, the hand that's up begins to float down, the hand that's down begins to float up. They meet at about shoulder chest height, and they float down together. Take a moment, a break, a breath, connecting upper body to the lower body, hands up, out, away from the body. Crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, ball of the right foot, hips and shoulders parallel to the earth. Hands in, foot in. Left foot in, not right foot. Hand down, heel down. Knee pop is optional. A little rebound pulls the hands into the belly. And there you go. I just want to see what time it is. Oh, okay. Glad I went to 6. So, there you go. Turn your head to look at the moon from Tai Chi Qigong at 6 repetitions. So again, I like that. I like to focus on the breath. I like to focus on maintaining chest sunk, back rounded, opening underneath the arms, elbows and shoulders dropped. One of the issues that people have is, hey, Lawrence, you said my arm is going, my hand is going above my head. How can my shoulder remain dropped? Well, there's a difference if that hand is going there. I'm going to turn sideways a little bit. If that hand is, or maybe a lot, that hand is going there, and you start that rise with the shoulder, so the shoulder is instigating that rise. It should be a conduit, and it only starts to go up when it has to. That way the shoulder is staying dropped. On the elbow, even though it's out, it's not out and up, it's out and down. So it too is sunken. All right, so there's your warm-up. We are going to play a stop and start. Now, what does that mean? It actually sort of harkens to how we first started doing anything, walking the rails, right? Railroad track is always at our shoulder width. I realized as I was getting close to closing that I mentioned what our shoulder, this represented our shoulder width, but I never clearly defined it for those who may not know. Where the drop of the shoulder is, not the outside of the delt, not, I'm going to come closer, not anywhere on top of the shoulder, not on the outside of the delt, but right at that initial decline. That should split the heel in that side in half. That's where my right blue line is. There's the drop of this shoulder, not anywhere on top, not the outside of the delt, but that initial decline should split the heel in that half, on that foot in half. That's where my left line is. And our walking the rails exercise is, I'm going to use the S word here, simply, with the hands in one of our 5 places, belly, back, we'll formalize this here in a moment, palm down, lightly closed fist, hands on the hips. Actually may not be necessary to, well, yeah, it might be. Formalize that. So I reach out, my foot out to my left heel out, and boom. And a lot of times when we first start, we stop, and then we take another step. And we stop. And that stopping is basically for a lot of people just sort of getting their bearings, maybe setting that foot down and finding their balance, and then taking another step, and stop. Or if we're doing the Tai Chi Walk, we have the 5 things of the Tai Chi Walk. And again, we'll be talking about this in more detail here in a moment. You go, okay, 1 is the step, 2 is the stance, and what comes after the stance. So in a stop and start exercise, this is where we stop because we want to check where everything is. And then, okay, there's 3, 4, and then there's 5, and then the whole thing starts over again. All right, so a stop and a start in rails, and the rails the way it's supposed to be, is just almost like a slinky going down the stairs. And the weight sort of bounces down one leg and then crossed into the next, and you're going back and forth. And the 5 count should flow. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 4, 4 becomes 5, becoming 1, 2, etc. And it's the same in the form. You start to learn the postures. The first posture, very jerky to begin with. Next posture, jerky to begin with what comes before it, a little bit smoother. But a stop and start allows us to really explore that everything is where it's supposed to be and doing what it's supposed to do. And I don't want to say it out loud because then it sets up an expectation. What can happen when you really focus on the stop and start, I'm going to come closer for this, is that because you do the stop and start, those lines you have spent a lot of time sanding down, removing, can then come back into your regular play. So there is a possibility that could happen. There are things to do to help eliminate that after you play a stop and start, and we'll talk about that when we get to that point. So there you go. So we're going to start with rails, but rails with a variation, so we have a little bit more than just our vertical alignment. So for those who don't really have, a form to play or a posture to play with this particular exercise, then rails with one rotation isn't too tough. So our vertical alignment, we have our shoulder width. I mentioned when we close, crown point of the head, so the chin is slightly down. Not chin parallel, crown point of the head is toward the back third of the skull. On the center line we were talking about before, runs up, center of chin, up over the nose, center of brow, center of eyes, up over the center of the top of the head. Where that line is crossed from opening ear to opening of ear is more or less where that Bach Way is. Not sure if I said that right, but it means 100 convergences or 100 points. We want that held, not lifted to the heavens. Held, chins down, it's just held there, right? Straight and strong leg and spine of yoga, we'd be straightening, we'd be lifting that point up, as opposed to just holding it up. Hope you could see the difference in that. So crown point of the head is going to center over the ball of one foot and then the ball of the other foot. And as we do that, we're going to have another ball. So we have the two balls of feet. We have a ball that we hold between our hands. Right hand on top, and in this instance, left hand on the bottom. And the ball's about the size of the torso. So when the weight's on the right foot, the right hand's going to be the top of the ball. When the weight's on the, sorry, not left hand, right foot. Left foot, left hand's the top of the ball. So that's our one rotation. And notice that rotation is sideways. The ball should be the same size here as it is here. So we want to represent that roundness in our arms. That's one of the things that we can sort of check in our stop and start exercise. The other thing that a stop and start allows us to do is, because we stop and hold something for a while, then our transitions become a little bit slower and we can pay attention to them a little bit more. So we'll do like one pass with a stop and start with rotating the ball. I'm going to get another drink. Because, it's morning. It's a day of the week. Come to calling them all Blur's Day these days. So, tape's starting to come up. All right, a little shake, no expectation. So we're going to stop at each full step. So as I settle in to begin, normally I settle in to begin and I want to have that step immediately. Here I'm going to settle in to begin. I'm going to settle the weight into the right foot, crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, the huyen, the perineum, over the ball of the foot. So I have those 3 points. So that's something I'm checking out. If I need to set that foot down to maintain my control, that's fine. But one of the things I want to check is, is my chin down? Is my chest sunk? My back rounded? Is my ball in the right spot, in that Goldilocks spot? It's not in too close. It's not out too far. But it's just settling. And then I step. And I slowly move into that left hand on top, that right hand on bottom. And I hang out here for a while. I breathe, I relax. I feel those little changes in my ankle because I'm on a mat. You'll probably even feel them on a more forgiving floor. And then I step. Now, I tend to hold this for about 3 of my breaths. that was 3 of my breaths. So you may have a greater breath capacity than I, and 3 breaths would, add another 10, 15 seconds, so that might be too long. You might breathe less deeply than I. Work on it. So maybe 6 breaths, maybe 4, maybe 5. But this allows me, is that elbow down, right? It's not out. And I'm not holding a ball at the bottom. See, there's roundness there. And a box at the top. Both forearms conform to the roundness of that ball. Are my feet parallel as I am walking? The slow transition allows me that ability to, is my ball size the same here as it is here? I'm going to take 2 more steps. I'm going to lose my head. I actually meant to close on that step, but I got into it before I realized where I was. Breathing. Notice, maybe you consider me a cheater because I have this nice round pattern on my t-shirt choice today. That's the last step, so I'm not going to move into the hold there because I want to move through my closing. And there you go. That's a stop and start with rails with 1 rotation. So you really have a chance to explore your structure, your ability to stay relaxed in this position as you hang out. Now I'm sort of gesturing with my hands a little bit much. So, are my shoulders and my hips parallel to the earth? I know the device is sort of set at an angle, so it looks like my shoulders are tilted this way, but they're really not. They're flat and even with the floor. Right? And start to compare left to right. We're going to have probably a little bit better balance on one side than the other. The thing to do is play Tai Chi detective and work on figuring out why that might be. And then one of the things we do then is maybe drill, if say it's the left that is less balanced than the right, spend a little bit more time developing your balance on your left than you do your right to sort of make that difference a little bit smaller. So before we get into the Tai Chi Walk, I just want to tell you where the idea for this came from. And it was actually more of a physical stress test, if you will, for people in another lineage. So when my instructor left Young Style shortly after I completed my program of study with him, my initial program of study, for Sun Style, not Sun Style, but Sun, and I'm not sure about the pronunciation. The head of that lineage, I had a rule that no one could be on their lineage's demonstration teams until they could play the 24 posture form, holding each posture for 8 breaths. That's not the end of it. It was not only holding the posture for 8 breaths, but holding each posture for 8 breaths with thighs parallel to the ground. So, yes, ouch. All right, so say I open the form and I'm doing Party in the Wild Horse's mane. Not quite parallel. There we go. And I have to hold that for 8 breaths before I take the next step. So that's where this idea sparked for me. Recognize I ain't making anybody do the thigh parallel thing. And I ain't making anybody do the 8 breaths. What I did was that sort of stress test idea, that concept in that particular lineage, and brought it into a teaching tool. My 3 breaths for some folks are too long. And that's okay. So you find what works for you that gives you time to explore. So the Tai Chi Walk, we're going to do the Tai Chi Walk next. Maybe introduce just a moment with one posture, and we'll call it a day. So our Tai Chi Walk still shoulder wide. Our shoulder width is determined by our heels. So at this point, if my heels are at shoulder width and I turn my toes in, by rotating on my heels, I am still shoulder wide. If I turn my toes out from an adduction to an abduction, by turning on my heels, I am still shoulder wide. But if I do that, bring my toes in by turning my heels out, I am now beyond my shoulder width. If I turn the toes out by bringing my heels in, I am no longer shoulder wide. So shoulder width is determined by the location of my heels alone. So instead of walking the rails and shifting 1 to 1, there are 5 things to get from one side to the other. One foot, let's do the right foot, is out at around a 45. As always, you don't really need a protractor app and take a picture of your foot to figure out what 45 degrees are, right? Straight toward the camera to the wall that's on the right side of my training area is a 90-degree angle. So somewhere around halfway in between. Now, some people would say it has to be a 45. Not everybody has that flexibility. I'll see how my left ankle is today. I have several screws in there holding, well, probably at this point, they're not really necessary to hold things together, but they were initially. So sometimes I have the ankle flexibility to be at a 45. Sometimes it has to be a little shallow. Sometimes it has to be a little bit deep. It has its own needs. So that's going to be the back foot. The front foot, where it is at shoulder width, just a little bit forward. Right? Not a lot. It's not about length. It's about width. So you may be in this position and have nary a bend of that knee. So legs are really, you're really up there. Not raising the center. I just raised my center instead of raising my height. And if I raise my height, is different than raising my center. Right? Or the longer the step when you're wide, the more difficulty you're going to have because the deeper the bend of the knee. But I want that shoulder width. Now be very, very careful as you square off the hips. Square off the hips, what does that mean? That means I'm facing a flat wall there, and if I had 4 points on the shoulders and the hips, all the, bumps and rolls and things in between don't count. The plane of my torso is parallel to the plane of the wall in front of me. In other words, my left shoulders pointed right straight to the left wall beyond my training area. My right shoulder's pointed right straight to the right wall beyond my training area, and the hips are the same. The left hip right out to the left side, right hip right out to the right side. I don't have an open hip here. Normally the back hip is the one that we always leave open. Turning. That puts about 70% of the weight on the front leg, about 30-40% of the weight on the back leg. My back heel is down. It's one of the things that we explore in our stop and start. And turn sideways for a moment, knee over ankle, safest. We're okay, knee over the top of the foot, but we don't want to go knee over or beyond the toes. Front toes in this position, forward. Right? They can also be in. I can start moving them in toward my center line, sort of pointing in the general vicinity of where the back foot is pointed. In this position, I don't want those toes out and away. Because the knee will still, because we're going forward, the knee will still want to move forward, and I can already feel that pressure where I don't want it on the inside of my knee. Boom. So that's our 4 stents. Now, to get to the other side, we have to give another caution to this back knee. And that's when I rock back, I want to sit down into that leg. I don't want to push it sideways. Knees aren't made to go sideways. Right? What does Dalton say in Roadhouse? Give me the biggest guy in the world. You smash his knee and he'll go drop like a stone. And that's smashing the knee is hitting it sideways to fold it in a direction it doesn't want to fold. So I sit down in that leg. Front toes come up off the ground. Again, another caution with that knee. I'm going to open up this area we call the quad. The inside upper thighs come into the pelvic bowl, more or less the groin. So my left hip opens up from my right hip like pages of a book, and that puts that left toe to the 45. That's 4 of the 5 count. And 5, I'm in the next ready position, so this is where I start. 1, my right heel reaches out to the right railroad track. 2, here's the stance. 3, rock back and release. 4 is the pivot. 5 is the step up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, no 3, 4, and 5, a little casual close. So wherever you are with your hands, you want your upper body involved with your closing. So the hands float up, out, away from the body. Just notice that. Up, out, away from the, just notice that. Up, out, just notice that. Up, out, and away from the body. And the back foot comes in. My heel's still in the air because I want to have something to press down as I press the arms down, hands down. Now I lengthen there, so then I sit down to bring my hands back into my belly. So that's the basic Tai Chi walk from the Water Tiger School perspective. We're wider than some people. We're more specific about hips and shoulders than some people. Our toes are a little bit different than some people because they're not shoulder wide. They can have their toes in different configurations, things like that. But that's us. So to do that as a stop and start, the stops are at that posture moment, 2 of the 5 count. So the hand positions I mentioned earlier, that then thought, oh no, I don't have to do that. Here they are. Belly, right hand over left or left hand over right. Back, create a hook with one hand, set the other one in it. Left next to the body, right next to the body. Floating, palm down, left on the left, right on the right. Don't tweak your wrist to get the palms parallel to the earth, right? If you have a little bit less wrist flexibility, downwards is fine. Work on your wrist flexibility. Lightly closed fists, wrists forward. Now my arms sort of move out away from my body when I do that. Yours may do the same thing, but don't make them do that. If you go from here to here and there's no movement, that's fine. 10, 12 years ago, that was the way for me. I've changed. My position will be my hands on my hips, so you can sort of see where my hips are going. That's why I do that. And notice my shoulder, not my shoulder, sorry. My elbow and my hips are pretty much pointed almost exactly the same direction. I'm not doing the chicken wing thing with the elbows back or the elbows forward, which you can't really do in this position anyway. So 5 count, stopping and holding on 2 each time. So settling in, taking our first step, turning forward. And again, when we first start, I'll just do this with early students because, okay, now take some time and just sort of feel where things are. Right? Knee over ankle, over top of the foot, front toes forward. Back foot, there's more than just the heel going down. And that idea of driving the heel down and back as you extend that leg. As you're extending that leg, that's what's driving you forward. It's something forward because something's going back. Keeping that hip moving forward and actually having to move it up so you stay even. So forward and up, back and down. Back heel driving down and back. But there can be a tendency here for the outside of the foot to roll. So you want to make sure you have at least your 3 nail points. Ball of the foot, outside of the instep, and heel all down, but really driving that back heel down. My split 70-30, 60-40. 80-20 is okay, 60-40 is okay. Don't want to go much, you don't really want to drop below 60-40. You don't want to do 58, 42 or something like that. Or 82-18. So rock back. Crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, moving between the balls of feet. Open up, be careful of that back knee. Come up, step, and the hold on this side. Are there any differences between the two sides? How's that back foot on this side? Is it at the 45? That back heel driving down and back, sort of like driving a screw into soft wood. Do you have the outside of the instep down? Are my hips even? Are my shoulders even? Is the plane of my torso parallel to the plane of the wall in front of me? Is my chest sunk and my back rounded? Is the Bak Wei held to the heavens and still over the base of the pelvic bowl. In other words, is my spine continuing to hang like a string of pearls or a string of stopwatch, right? This should be the spine. There's the crown point of the head. There's the base of the pelvic bowl. There's the anchor. Boom. It's nice and relaxed. It's not stiff. Sometimes we say we want vertical alignment and people think stiff, shoulders back, that sort of thing. Rock back, turn out, step up, step. Now I'm going to do the actual timing, 3 breaths here for me. Just checking things out, maybe pulsing a little bit. And then the next step. Moving fluidly from stance to stance. Two more steps. One more step. We are actually going to hold the last one here. And a little tilt there. Bad me. A little close. Again, hands up over the top of the bowl, in, brings the foot in, down, presses the heel down. I'm lengthening again, and a little rebound, pulls the hands into the belly. So you can do that with your various stances, back and forth from side to side. Do it with your forms. Right? So the 24. Going to skip the opening. I'm going to do parting the wild horse's mane. Right? I'm just going to do a couple of postures as a hold, I think, as opposed to lead people through the form. Right? So we're in that same position. Right? And every time you get to that position in, say, the 24 posture form, and the arms are where the arms are, you're in parting the wild horse's mane. You'll hold that posture for 3 breaths. Right? In parting the wild horse's mane, the hand that matches the front leg, center of palm, center of chest. The hand that matches the back leg is palm down, fingertips forward, aside but in front of the hip, not beside the hip, but aside and in front of the hip. So in that front corner of the front plane, sort of like dribbling a basketball. Chest sunk back, rounded. Is my arm too far away? Is it too close? Is it just right? Is the elbow dropped? And you hold that for your 3 counts. You rock back, you turn out, you step, and you hold that for your count of breaths. And instead of three breaths, I'll just tell you, whatever breath count it is. Now that you've got the upper body involved, is your back foot still heel and outside of the instep still down, or are you now rolling to the inside of the ball of your foot? Are you still 70-30? Right? So you do that for each of the postures, regardless of what that posture may be. White crane, if you've been following us and you haven't learned this aspect of the form, you still had that opportunity to learn what white crane was in our sequence in our 2 posture walking exercise, horse's mane to white crane, where all the weight's on the back foot's at the 45, ball the foot's down in a comfortable place for you, right, with no weight on it, if that can be. Hand up, elbow rounded, chest sunk, back rounded, palm down, elbow, even though it's raised, not raised. I don't know if you can see that sort of tilt. It's not like that. Right? See the difference? The elbow is still sunken in that position. Do you feel like you are that great bird, the white crane, for your 3 breaths? Right? Pei pa. No, brush knee. Let's, brush knee. Every time you do a brush knee, settle into that position. Here, the forward hand matching the weighted arm is in the front plane, palm down, sort of dribbling the basketball on this side. This hand, for us at Water Tiger School, slightly angled down. A lot of people do it up here, right? Or move it toward the center line. We're down here, pushing the palm and settling the wrist. So that's something that in a stop and start I will drill for a while, is that final pulse matching the pushings of the palms and the settling of the wrists. 70-30, back foot down. So every time you do a brush knee, you hold it for 3 breaths, and then you move to the next. Pei Pa, like white crane, right leg is weighted, it's a false stance, it's an empty stance. This time the heel is down, the toes are slightly up. Left hand a little bit farther away from the body, right hand closer to. You have that prayer hands and then separating. Boom. And you hang out there for 3 breaths. And then you do the next thing. For us is repulse the monkey, and it ends like that. And then you hold that for your number of breaths. Playing, making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be, that you're not leaning down, you're not leaning back, your chest is sunk, your back is rounded, there's an opening underneath this arm, there's an opening underneath this arm. Everything is where it needs to be. And that's how you do a stop and start. So something like the 24 and those stops and holds will take a while. So it's also a good workout on the legs. And that helps to build root, it helps to build the connection to the earth in our play as well. Plus, I love the fact that when you're stopping and holding something for a while, then it allows that transition to also unfold very, very slowly, so you can really explore the connections in between. So there you go. Stop and start, walking exercises, floor exercises with postures, form to date. If you don't have a full form, you can still do the form to date. So you're doing the 24 and you're only up to white crane. Do a stop and start from opening through the 3 horse's mane to white crane. And then maybe repeat it and do it again. Maybe play it to the other side. Now, I think I'm running a little bit over today with what my usual time frame is. So sorry about that. My palate cleanser here is if I'm doing the Tai Chi Walk, what we did, and it was, really, really slow and holding, is then I move as fast as I can through the form. That wasn't through the walking exercise or through the form. If I'm doing like the, parting wild horse's mane sequence into white crane, I do sort of a little Quicksilver version. That one's probably coming up as actually a focus for us at some point in the future. But there you go. So again, a little Tai Chi Qigong this morning. A little approach to our floor exercises and forms called a stop and start to really drill into structure. Structure is not although I talk about it all the time, it is not the end all and be all of Tai Chi, but it does set the foundation for everything else. So, that structure, that connection to the earth, the root, everything all of that's really very important. So, there you go. Hope you had a good time. Colette did. You're welcome, Colette. So, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. I have my pile of books. So, that will be good. But anyway, so remember, obviously we were here this week. Won't be here on the 17th. No live session on the 17th. Going to go dark for a week. And just have some me time, some us time, myself and my wife, where she's not on the phone upstairs while I'm, doing stuff in my office downstairs, or doing this. So there's that. We'll be back on, what is that then, the 24th, should be back on the 24th. Heads up, I think at some point this week, my Facebook page is going to have a really, really short live session. Look for that. I'm aiming for Wednesday at 10 a.m., doing a little live session for the Laoshi Lawrence McElroy Facebook page at 10 a.m. On this Wednesday, just to give you a little bit something else upon which to chew. So there's that. Again, studio is currently closed. will be for a while. But we are still, we're still doing the remote sessions for our studio students. So it's not like we're not doing something. And we're doing this, and we're doing the YouTube channel. And keep your eyes on the YouTube channel too. And by the way, if you haven't been to the YouTube channel, then, this might be your opportunity over this next week while, this isn't available to catch up on, I don't know how many, I did a count the other day. I think it's something like 30 or 40 videos at this point, because there are a lot that were more than one part. And when we first started, we were doing, in some instances, like 2 or 3 a week as we were addressing different stuff. And if you have any ideas about what you'd like to see, either in these live sessions or the YouTube video, put it in the comments or fire me off an email, and we'll give it consideration. Doesn't mean we'll do it, but we'll give it consideration. So there's that. Keep washing your hands. Wear a damn mask. Can't tell you how much that is necessary. Stay home when you can, whenever it is possible. And keep working. For Long Island, for New York, there's still a little, not a curve. We're kind of plateaued, but we're plateaued right at 1% infection rate, right around there. And it'd be nice to get it lower than that. But other parts of the country, of this country, are skyrocketing. So we still have to do what we can do. And you might be interested, on that note. There's I posted an old essay on my Laoshi page, Laoshi Lawrence McElroy on Facebook, that's sort of about that in a way. So anyway, there you go. I'm going to sign off. So thanks, everybody. Hope you had a good time. Be well. Be safe. Wear a mask. And we'll catch you next time.